put simply, service virtualization is a technique used in testing to simulate the behavior of the components that might be unavailable, difficult to access, or simply too expensive. Let's discuss few important points on this. So service virtualization helps in behavior simulation. So behavior simulation here is like if we are testing an application, we want to test how the application behaves in different scenarios. So suppose we need to check what happens to the application if internet goes down, right? And also, so if internet goes down or anything there is a downtime, what response will application response will application respond back with? So here the test team can virtualize the API, the dependent API, to simulate that behavior. And there are many other use cases for this. Test data virtualization. So test data is quite important if we think of the testing. Suppose in case of automation, we need n number of test data. Right? So test data should be readily available. For example, there can be multiple test cases in a banking application based on customers' current account balances. So it would be challenging to get different customer test data with required account balance. Service virtualization in this case may help to simulate such test data as well as test the application UI behavior. So in any case, right, so the APIs which will send back the response, that will have all the customer data. So that is reflected in the UI also. So that's how the UI is designed to interact with the APIs. And performance testing. So in performance testing, what happens is we need to suppose integration testing is done and everything is fine at functional level, application is working quite good, but what if the performance of that application is not good? So if there are too many customers or too many users there, so the application won't be able to handle the load. So we need to check the timeout between middleware and the APIs. What's the timeout? If within the timeout which is defined, it is responding or not. So in short, the latency of API and the between the communication between the application and the API should be within the time limit defined. So in that case, performance testing, in that case we can virtualize few APIs, right? So even in case of service virtualization, we can have hardware in place to perform the performance testing. So in that case, virtualized services will respond back with the expected transaction per second. So the next one, the last one, is negative testing. So negative testing is quite important in integration testing, where we need to have where we check few functional aspects of the application, how it performs if the server is down, and how it performs if user enters in invalid data. Right? So there are many negative test cases which we need to test. So in that case also, so let's take an example. So if there is a add to cart button in the application, and that should be automatically disabled if the product is out of stock, right? So if everything is in stock, this test could not happen. Negative testing. Negative testing allows users to create very rare scenarios using service virtualization, helping them to prepare for potential pitfalls, right? So potential pitfalls before they even occur. So that's how negative testing is handled by the service virtualization. So in our next session, we will be discussing a use case where we will understand how service virtualization works. Thank you guys. So in this session, we will have a quick overview of the use case which I have already used. So we will cover a few of the points related to virtual service, how virtual service will be implemented in this use case. So the request will flow through the banker application to the vendor API, that is the customer API, and customer API will in turn send back the response. So here what we will do is we will virtualize the whole customer API. So one thing to note here is in case of virtual service, most often the whole API is virtualized, right? So here what will happen is we will virtualize the customer API, and how it will be integrated is, so an endpoint is generated for a particular virtual service. So there can be many virtual service on a single server, right? So as we have already discussed, there is a dedicated server for this. So we will share the endpoint with the middleware team or the development team. So they will integrate the actual application with the virtual customer service. So the real customer API endpoint will be replaced with the virtual customer API, which we will be sharing with the development team or the middleware team. So that's how it works. So let's discuss few of the points which we have already discussed. So this virtual service will be hosted on a dedicated server. Why? Because many teams will use it in a single time, right? And also this might be used for performance testing. So in that case, the server will be configured accordingly. And also this will be mostly developed using a enterprise service virtualization team like dev test by Broadcom. So we have already discussed this will be shared by many teams and the whole API is virtualized, right? So it's not like every time we need to virtualize the whole API, but mostly the whole API is virtualized. It covers all the test cases and also it covers many stubs within a single API, right? So that's how it works. Thank you guys. I think so this course met your expectation. Meet you soon again. Thank you. We're discussing some of the tools that are used in service virtualization, using which you can virtualize any of the services. So most of them also almost all the tools support HTTP, REST and SOAP protocols. But there are few paid tools also which are called enterprise tools, and they support many other protocols. So we will be discussing in few minutes. So let's discuss some open source tools. So first one is the Mountbank. So Mountbank is quite old tool and it's an open source tool which can execute multi-protocol test. And the code base is Node.js. So in this it's quite easy to create stubs and mocks. So many developer also use this. So you can easily use the API to code few of the stubs. Second one is the Hoverfly. So it is available as an API. So they have a DSL which is available free of cost. You can just import the jar and start using it using any of the ID. And it's also available in Hoverfly as a cloud version. It's an integrated service virtualization tool. So here also it will use the same Hoverfly engine itself. But the thing is you will be provided with the UI over the web. You just need to create the account and you can start virtualizing. Another one is MockLab. So you might have heard about the WireMock. It's quite extensively used. So WireMock also provides Java API. So there is jar available free of cost. There are also many examples available on the GitHub also, using which you can start with the virtualization easily, just adding jar onto the class path in the IDE, right? And further, MockLab works on the WireMock engine itself, but it is available over the cloud. So you can simply open the URL, register your account, and once you have done with that, you can start virtualizing. It's quite useful, and the UI is quite good there. It's very easy to virtualize. Also, they have provided the extensive documentation which you can follow for doing the hands-on. So we will be using MockLab in our further hands-on, because using MockLab anyone can start with the virtualization even a bit. It's quite efficient for the beginner also who are not aware about the code, how to do code or coding basics. Then afterward you can move to WireMock API. And the next one are the enterprise tools, also called paid tools. So one we have the Tricent is Tosca. So Tricent is offer many of the tools. So Tricent, so it allows steady access to dependent systems so that test can be executed reliably. Functionality of all the tools remains the same. Similarly, we have Parasoft Virtualize. We have Micro Focus SV. The main difference here is and one more thing. So we have CA Technologies. Now it is renamed to Broadco, which is acquired by Broadcom, and its new name is CA Leader Dev Test. So I have extensively used this CA Technologies tool, and it's quite good and quite in demand nowadays. And if you note, the resources are also quite less in virtualization, right? Because it's still evolving technology, right? But it quite fastens up the process. So in CA technologies or Parasoft or Microfocus, and if we compare it with the open source tool, they can virtualize HTTP, REST, SOAP, and also many other protocols, even the middlewares, IBM MQ, JDBC services. Then we have, they can also do data driven virtual services, right? So there are many agents are also available using which you can do anything at the client or at the server end. Similarly, we have the Service Pro. So I think so you all have gone through the SOAP UI once. We have discussed that in our previous lectures also, when we were creating test cases through Open API specification and WSDL. So within the Ready API, there is a Service Pro is also a functionality or a module that is linked to only virtualization part, also called the mock services. So using, but that the thing is, this is a paid version, but 15 orders trial is also available, I think. So you can just download it and you can do hands-on also there. So almost for every product documentation is provided, right? But still you need some guidance. If you have some guidance, then it will be quite easy, right? So that's all, guys. Let's move to our next session.